دبي موئل الثقافات وحاضنة الإبداع، تحتضن بين أركانها مزيجا فريدا من الثقافات والتقاليد، حيث يلتقي التراث العريق مع الفكر الحديث. على مر العصور كانت دبي مركزا للحوار الحضاري وبيئة مثالية لتلاقي العقول والأفكار من مختلف أرجاء العالم، ساعية دوما لتعزيز ثقافة المعرفة والانفتاح. وهنا اليوم في قلب دبي حيث يبنى المستقبل، في هذا الصرح الثقافي مكتبة محمد بن راشد تلتقي نخبة من العقول من جميع أنحاء العالم في حدث يجمع بين أمجاد الماضي وتحديات الحاضر ورؤى المستقبل. أهلا بكم في أول نسخة من مؤتمر دبي الدولي للمكتبات، حيث تبدأ رحلة جديدة لإعادة تعريف دور المكتبات في العالم. أكثر من 60 خبيرا من 25 دولة يجتمعون ليطرحوا رؤى جديدة ستعيد تشكيل مفهوم المكتبات. استعدوا لاستكشاف التحول الرقمي في المكتبات عبر الذكاء الاصطناعي واكتشاف الكنوز الأيقونية والمجموعات النادرة. من خلال أكثر من 60 جلسة نلقي الضوء على مستقبل المكتبات وأهمية التراث والمعرفة للأجيال القادمة. إنه الحدث الذي سيخلد في تاريخ المكتبات، مؤتمر دبي الدولي للمكتبات 2024، حيث يجتمع الماضي والحاضر والمستقبل. دبي موئل الثقافات وحاضنة الإبداع، تحتضن بين أركانها مزيجا فريدا من الثقافات والتقاليد، حيث يلتقي التراث العريق مع الفكر الحديث. على مر العصور كانت دبي مركزا للحوار الحضاري وبيئة مثالية لتلاقي العقول والأفكار من مختلف أرجاء العالم، ساعية دوما لتعزيز ثقافة المعرفة والانفتاح. وهنا اليوم في قلب دبي حيث يبنى المستقبل، في هذا الصرح الثقافي مكتبة محمد بن راشد تلتقي نخبة من العقول من جميع أنحاء العالم في حدث يجمع بين أمجاد الماضي وتحديات الحاضر ورؤى المستقبل. أهلا بكم في أول نسخة من مؤتمر دبي الدولي للمكتبات، حيث تبدأ رحلة جديدة لإعادة تعريف دور المكتبات في العالم. أكثر من 60 خبيرا من 25 دولة يجتمعون ليطرحوا رؤى جديدة ستعيد تشكيل مفهوم المكتبات. استعدوا لاستكشاف التحول الرقمي في المكتبات عبر الذكاء الاصطناعي واكتشاف الكنوز الأيقونية والمجموعات النادرة. من خلال أكثر من 60 جلسة نلقي الضوء على مستقبل المكتبات وأهمية التراث والمعرفة للأجيال القادمة. إنه الحدث الذي سيخلد في تاريخ المكتبات، مؤتمر دبي الدولي للمكتبات 2024، حيث يجتمع الماضي والحاضر والمستقبل. دبي موئل الثقافات وحاضنة الإبداع، تحتضن بين أركانها مزيجا فريدا من الثقافات والتقاليد، حيث يلتقي التراث العريق مع الفكر الحديث. على مر العصور كانت دبي مركزا للحوار الحضاري وبيئة مثالية لتلاقي العقول والأفكار من مختلف أرجاء العالم، ساعية دوما لتعزيز ثقافة المعرفة والانفتاح. وهنا اليوم في قلب دبي حيث يبنى المستقبل، في هذا الصرح الثقافي مكتبة محمد بن راشد تلتقي نخبة من العقول من جميع أنحاء العالم في حدث يجمع بين أمجاد الماضي وتحديات الحاضر ورؤى المستقبل. أهلا بكم في أول نسخة من مؤتمر دبي الدولي للمكتبات، حيث تبدأ رحلة جديدة لإعادة تعريف دور المكتبات في العالم. أكثر من 60 خبيراً من 25 دولة يجتمعون ليطرحوا رؤى جديدة ستعيد تشكيل مفهوم المكتبات. استعدوا لاستكشاف التحول الرقمي في المكتبات عبر الذكاء الاصطناعي واكتشاف الكنوز الأيقونية والمجموعات النادرة. من خلال أكثر من 60 جلسة نلقي الضوء على مستقبل المكتبات وأهمية التراث والمعرفة للأجيال القادمة. إنه الحدث الذي سيخلد في تاريخ المكتبات، مؤتمر دبي الدولي للمكتبات 2024، حيث يجتمع الماضي والحاضر والمستقبل.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everybody. Ahlan, and welcome to this session. Just want to start by saying what an honor it is to be part of the inaugural Dubai International Library Conference. I'm Harith Al-Bastani. I'm a senior consultant with Burson. It's a global communications agency, and I'm part of the arts and culture practice, so I get to work with arts and culture projects all across the region. Prior to that, I spent most of my career as a journalist. I'm an author as well. I was the arts and culture editor at the National, so it's fair to say that libraries have always been a really important part of my personal and professional lives. In this session today, we're going to be talking about libraries as the mark of a caring and civilized society. Now, when we talk about civilized society, obviously there's a lot of different meanings and a lot of different interpretations that people have of that. But I think the one thing that we can all agree upon is that a civilized society is a society that treats its people fairly. And the way it does that is through a complex network of cultural, political, legal, social hierarchies and institutions and frameworks that make that way of life possible. And libraries have a really crucial role to play within that framework, because it's the libraries where people are engaged. The libraries educate people. They empower the citizens to become active participants in civilized society. With that said, I'm really pleased to be joined today by a really inspiring group of librarians from diverse backgrounds. We have Professor Rosemary Shafak, who's the Professor of Library and Information Services at the University of Bo in Cameroon. She holds several leadership roles: the IFLA Africa Section Secretary and Chair, and AFLIA President among them. We have Constantia Constantinou, who is a global leader recognized for her pioneering work integrating large university library systems with broader academic missions, including at the University of Pennsylvania, where she led the executive management of 19 libraries. We have Dr. Rangashri Kishore, who is the Regional Director South for READ India, and she was also the founding director of University Library of Ashoka University Library, yes. And sorry. Of course, we have Wanjiru Korinange, who's an author and restorer of libraries. She co-founded BookBank, which is devoted to restoring Nairobi's public libraries. Now, of course, you've all done so much more than that within the field of libraries, but I'd like to give you all an opportunity to kind of introduce yourself in your own words and draw on your own experience to comment on what you think the role of libraries are within civilized society and how they contribute towards that. Please.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. For me, like I've already been introduced, I am a librarian by profession, and I do information service delivery with all the passion that I can provide from my energy. Looking at this topic, libraries as a caring and civilized tool, the first question I'm asking is to myself, am I able to cater for the information users and to project the values of my community? Because every community, like he said, if it's civilized, it has to cater for its people, and it has to project its values. And every library in that community has to project such values to ensure that everyone in the community is on the same wavelength, is inclusive, has an enabling environment when they come into the libraries to protect them. And so the question I'm asking is to myself, first of all, and I know that soon we'll be talking about the real details of this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Good morning, everyone. My name is Costandino. I work in the United States, but I'm a native of Cyprus. Cyprus, as a country with a very rich and old history, inspires my work as a librarian and my passion when it comes to equalizing access for all citizens, but also preserving cultural heritage, whether it's the books, the manuscripts, the sounds, the music, or the historical sites of our countries, where sometimes could be at risk because of environmental conditions or because of local conflict. So today we're talking about libraries and their role in the society, and my contributions to my panel's discussion will be how academic libraries, where has been most of my work grounded, support the local communities that may not enjoy the privileges of very wealthy institutions.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Dr. Rangashri Kishore, and thanks for inviting me over to this topic. I work in Read India, which is a part of the international NGO Read Global. And in Read India has set up community libraries across India, 75 such centers. And these are basically in the rural areas. And my background has been also having worked with UN and also in university libraries. I have tried my best to see that isolated university libraries, wherever they are, we have been trying to be inclusive, trying to engage the rural community people to visit our library and engage, read books. We encourage them, and that's my model of being a librarian. In addition, I'm also a mental health worker. I have set up community support services for mental health. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Wanjiru Koinange, and I'm honored to be on stage with these legends. I am from Nairobi, Kenya. I'm an author and a restorer of libraries. And I think because I'm a storyteller, I'm going to start with a story to tell you why we do the work that we do. So Book Bank, which we set up in 2017 to restore public libraries, we took about 3 years asking questions to the people who were already using the libraries. So we like to adopt libraries that already have kind of patronage, because Kenya has a very special place in its heart for libraries. We have most of the libraries on the African continent are in Kenya. So we don't need new spaces. So we prefer to restore existing spaces. And in 2021, when we finished our second restoration, the biggest one yet, we had this girl who would come into the library before the restorations, and she'd come in religiously after school and on the weekends, and she'd sit in her corner and do her homework until 8 p.m. and then go home. And then during COVID, which is when we were restoring the libraries, obviously they were shut down. And when we reopened, brand new, beautiful libraries that kind of had everything that we'd been told people wanted, she walked in and kind of froze. She stopped and was scared at the door because the space looked so different. And she then began to walk away, and we're like, no, come back. It's still your library. We encouraged her to come back to the library because she did not for a minute believe that all the things she told us that she wanted would actually be delivered to her library. And this library that looked beautiful and vibrant and full of art and greenery, in her view, was no longer for her, because in certain parts of the city, we don't have the kind of investment in public spaces that then allow users to think that this beautiful space is not a private space. I don't have to pay to be here. I can come as I am. And that is, I guess, in the roots of the work that we do. We take existing spaces that have a lot of potential to serve community better, and then we ask a lot of questions to the users about what they want and how the spaces can serve them. And everything we do is a response to the answers we receive. Thank you.
Thank you for that. This is something that we all had an opportunity to discuss earlier just now. But here in this country, we're very fortunate to have access to beautiful libraries and with incredible resources. But obviously, there's a lot of communities around the world, in various parts of the world, and at various times, who don't have access to libraries or who have struggled with resources. We discussed libraries are very difficult to actually finance, actually they require a lot of investment and support from stakeholders. And I'm wondering, could you please kind of touch upon, each of you, some of the projects that you've worked on where you kind of really had to be creative and really saw the results of libraries being able to reach out to people who maybe feel excluded or who feel they don't have access to those resources, but to actually reach out and engage them in meaningful ways?
Thank you for that very insightful but challenging question. It is true that in many parts of our community and the world, we don't have the resources to invest to build the kinds of libraries that should be able to resource the users of that community. But like all the information workers will agree with me, libraries cannot be built by institutions alone. It's a community effort. And I want to just remember my days in library school when we were doing collection development. I was reminded that libraries are the biggest beggars because the ways of acquisitions vary. You have exchanges, you have gifts, you have endowments, and besides the investment, from the institutions that own the libraries themselves, which means that the libraries cannot sit there and think that they can build those resources alone. So for me, with the experience being leading library associations and teaching in a library school, what we have emphasized on is to come up with beautiful advocacy projects. An elevator speech that you can meet a mayor, of a city and talk to him about the value of libraries, creating partnerships. There are many people who can afford. They have the money and they don't know where to invest the money. I think the money should be invested in touching lives. And the way to touch lives is to enable people have a platform where they can build their skills, build knowledge, be able to feel part of that community, be in an enabling environment where you can have a dialogue. Like she just said, she had to invite the little girl to come back and say, this is still your library. And I think that when we all put hands on deck, that will be the case. We have gone out in our own cases and looked for funds from IFLA, from the American government. We have looked for funds from Bill and Melinda Gates, to be able to provide the resources that we on our own couldn't provide. And we also have many partners that have given us resources, they've given us even money to buy equipment, infrastructure. And it's not only about that. You can have the resources, but you don't know how to leverage them. So we have carried on workshops that should teach our young librarians, information workers, to know how to make do with little things. And we are in a global world now. Libraries are no more places where we come to get books. We are without walls, without borders, which means we can also build our virtual collections. We have open source resources that are of quality, and we have other organizations that we can sign, memoranda of understanding with them to have access to their resources. So I think that if you have just a beamer and you have a workstation and you have internet connectivity, you'll be overwhelmed with the kinds of resources that you can provide for your community. And so talking about not having resources in the 21st century, might be a little tricky, because if you have the skills, you have at least some minimal resources. Because to tell you the truth, there's no library that is so well self-sufficient that it will say, I don't need any more information. You know, we are evolving, and content creators are leveraging their outputs every day, and so we need to keep updating and innovating. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Community engagement is every library's responsibility, whether it's an academic library or a public library or a corporate library. It is inherited into our values to be engaged with our communities and share with our communities. The example that I would like to share with you was in Philadelphia, where my institution, the University of Pennsylvania, was. Right after the pandemic, the city has suffered a lot of economic withdrawal. And as always, school libraries or public libraries are minimized in their resources. As a university, we extended our resources to the school libraries when they closed because they didn't have enough people to staff the libraries, and when they did not have enough books and other resources to populate those spaces. Therefore, we gathered all the books that we had, whether they were second copies or third copies, were able to purchase additional copies, and were able to send our own staff into those libraries to volunteer their time as employees of the university to keep the libraries open. When we thought that this was just a small gesture of supporting our own community, as it turns out, when we looked at the efforts that we put in and the energy, we were able to open up to 25 libraries in schools that were closed and to support 10,000 students who didn't have access to the libraries. For me, that was an eye-opening experience to realize the impact of large institutions existing in communities where they're just across the street and lending our resources, our expertise, and our own people to be able to keep those libraries open. In addition to that, leveraging our negotiating powers with publishers, we're able to negotiate contracts and licenses for electronic resources to also have them available for all the school libraries in the city of Philadelphia and in the state of Pennsylvania. So we're talking about thousands and thousands of students who never had access to certain electronic resources now being able to have access to those resources by carrying out the cost of those license agreements.
Yeah, I agree with your analogy. And my experience in Read India has been, I am the regional director for South, where in South India we have Read India's centers. And these centers are based in the rural or semi-urban areas where the population is, deprived of library services. And here we engage the rural community, women, men, and children to form their own groups to start a community library. And they provide the space, and we provide a minimal rent for that. And the women, it's not just a library with books, but it also has computers. It has, we provide them with sewing machines, and the women come and learn tailoring, and skill development is happening in that place. And it's an opportunity for women there who don't get access to any resources or otherwise don't have an opportunity to network with people who can help them. There are cases where during pandemic they had violence against women were there happening in the homes, but these women could come there and talk about it and take help from the community there. And there are also, my experience with Ashoka University Library has been, the university was in an isolated campus surrounded by many villages in Haryana. And the state of Haryana is pretty rich, but they are largely involved in farming, so that the farming communities have to be physically present there, and they don't have time to go and reach out to learn or, so the children also are roped in to come and help them in the farming. What I did was I wrote a proposal and got funded for a mobile library project. And this mobile library went on to, to the communities. We stationed it in different villages. Women came to learn about, we fitted it with a 52-inch TV, screened educational cartoons in Haryanvi language, the local language. And the children really enjoyed. And slowly we took it to the school, because the dropouts then, 70% of them went back to school. This has been the impact. And that impact was featured in the Library Map of the World in IFLA's program as one and only story from India. So I'm really happy that we need to do this kind of models, in other places where the impact will be made visible. And this has been my experience, and I would like to add on.
Thank you. That's very inspiring. So one of our, we have 3 libraries at Book Bank that we've adopted. All of them are public libraries. All of them are managed by the state, are owned by the county of Nairobi. One of them is the oldest library in Nairobi. It's called the Macmillan Memorial Library. It was built there in 1931 by British colonial settlers, and it was intended for the exclusive use of British colonial settlers. This was the truth until 1958, when, on the cusp of independence, the library was handed back to the government, or handed to the governments of Kenya. And the governments of Kenya said, on condition that we can use the library, is how we're going to take the library. And that was all good. But the thing is, between 1958 to date, there have been no updates to the collection, to the building. It's like walking into a 1931 time capsule of what Nairobi was then, which is a blessing and a curse to some extent, because it just meant that when we came in to restore it, we could really honor the past while looking at the future. So we began over the pandemic to build a digital library by digitizing all of the rare materials that were in that library, and we digitized them and put them online for all of the world to use. And about 9 months in, we realized, hang on, this collection was built to exclude Kenyans. So by digitizing it, you're continuing the same problematics of the original collection. So we have to very quickly bring in the perspectives from our community that allow us to put the stories that existed in the library with our own perspectives. And then we launched a project called The Missing Bits, which is our attempt at plugging the missing bits of the archive and essentially of the library. Because what we do is every year we pick a theme and we announce to the public, please come to the library, tell us your version of this story. On the first year, we asked everybody, where were you on Independence Day? Which automatically meant that you're speaking to people who are 60 plus, and we had all manner of beautiful stories that now sit alongside the official stories of independence. And now we have stories of, for instance, my mother telling me that she was getting her hair done, or my brother or my uncle telling me that he was in another part of the country and didn't even know about independence until weeks later. And that's one of the ways that we engage the community. And all of the things that have been mentioned here are stuff that we do, but in the kind of archive building work, we think it's really important in societies such as Africa, where we're very oral in our traditions, to lean into that and to begin to capture the stories that live in people's homes, in their family albums, and in their communities, and bring those to the library so that everybody can then get a stronger sense of who we are as Kenyans.
It's a really interesting point, because this region is also a region where a lot of the history there's an oral tradition where much of what we know was passed down through word of mouth. When you look at like the Bedouin poetry tradition, for example, that survived through word of mouth, and it's through that we've been able to convey our values and our histories. And it's only today where finally those are being archived. And I think this is when you talk about digitization and archiving, I think it's a real testament to the power of technology to assist in a lot of these efforts. But obviously there's also drawbacks from technology, but in the sense that obviously there's a lot more distractions for people that keep them away from libraries. And I'm wondering, what do you think are some of the biggest ways in which technology has disrupted your ability to engage with people? And what are the best ways in which it's actually helped to facilitate that engagement?
Thank you very much. I think technology is there to disrupt, as you rightly said. You see the young moving on to watching movies and other things. You hardly find a young person coming in to pick a novel or something to read. They want to go to YouTube. They want to all the social media channels that you will imagine. So I think the urge to be with the newest technology, wearing headsets, earpieces, has been the way for the younger generation. Now the question is, what are we doing to bring back these people to the library? I think that libraries cannot sit on their comfort zones and expect the impossible to happen. Those young people are out there because they can easily they can go online and find whatever they want to find on social media. But as librarians, what we do, and practically so, is that we look at the training technologies. We adapt and adopt by training ourselves with the necessary skills, the importance of the technology, and we build literacy programs. And we go out there to the community outreach with partners. If we need to go do training for children to know what they can do with AI, for example, the beautiful part of AI and the ugly part of AI, we need to have hands-on in a literacy program, and we get the IT experts and all the partners that we need to go out there and organize workshops. As library associations, we organize workshops like Wikimedia. Let me talk about Wikimedia. What we did was, everybody goes out there and gets what they want to get, but looking around the world, especially with OCLC, what they had done, what we did was to partner with OCLC. And then we customized their curriculum to the African one. And we were able to come up with an African curriculum on Wikimedia. And we started advocating for Wikimedians. And now we have a huge Wikimedian foundation on the African continent. And we have been training with the curriculum for the past 3 years. And we are seeing that other regions are reaching out to us, to share our experiences with that. And I think that that's the way to go. And when it comes to AI, we are organizing workshops so that we ourselves should be able to be familiar with what AI can offer and what aspects are good, what are the policies, what are the ethical aspects. And you don't expect those children to know all of that. You need to integrate all of this into their learning. And what we do is that we move to faculties, we move to schools, and we have beautiful discussions on the table with these educational authorities to say there is a need to reinvent some little space in the curriculum to fit in these trending technologies, because we cannot run away from them. We have to embrace them, and we have to embrace them cautiously and to be able to highlight the limitations and then promote the positives of this. And in that way, the children are beginning to realize that technology is not just jumping out there and using them, but there are ways of doing that. Let me take the case of higher education, because we are talking about libraries in general here. With higher education, when the student knows that he has to write his maybe end-of-year project or publish an article, he needs to have hands-on scientific writing skills. And he knows that before that piece of work assignment is submitted, we will turn it in for similarity check. And we want to know whether, have you properly cited your sources? Are there issues of plagiarism, which is not acceptable at all? There's little tolerance for plagiarism. So what do we need to do? We need to go out there and organize literacy programs for them in their research courses to tell them how to do proper writing, how to respect scientific writing skills, how to respect the citation systems, and that things are done in line with guidelines. You don't do what you want to do the way you want to do it. And so that's the way we look at it. We want to be user-centric in the way we leverage our information resources. We don't want to sit there and imagine and dream. So it's a lot of effort by building your own skills, packaging them well, building partnerships, and going out to the community for outreach to meet those users there, whether be them in schools, be them in higher institutions of learning. And then she talked about mobile libraries. You know that we don't have enough resources that we can use in opening all the beautiful libraries or all the libraries in all the nooks and crannies of our communities. And so in some cases, the mobile libraries are created, and there should be some kind of flagship for what a true library should be. And there must be people to accompany these libraries and leverage the skills on how to use them. And so irrespective of the distractions of technologies, I think we have more work, and we need to be to put in each thinking cap every morning, because every morning we get up, there's a new technological trend. And so what is trending now, we should be able to grab it, first of all, as librarians, as information workers, and understand it, adopt the positive aspects of it, and highlight the limitations, and then move out there to share with these young people. I think in that way, it's been helping, it's been useful, especially working as a community of library association with all kinds of libraries. All kinds of libraries, I mean. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Rosemary spoke of the disruptions and interruptions of technology and what's the latest trends that we librarians need to adapt to. One of my transformative experience was when I realized that people of a younger generation, younger than I am, they were born digital. They were born in the times where electronic resources and where everything was digital for them to learn, to understand, to read. And realizing that many of these young people never seen primary resources in their lives, we invited the high school students to come to our library to see for the first time, perhaps in their life, what a manuscript looks like, what a primary source looks like, and to challenge their thinking in ways that seeing something, the original poem or the original score of music, the original writing of an author as the primary resources, and not something that they have read, seen, watched on a video that could have been interpreted or misinterpreted differently, but to challenge their own critical thinking to go to the actual root of the source, to the primary document, and understand what the Constitution is, or what Marian Anderson's songs look like in the actual score. And that was very transformative for the students who have never seen the handwritten manuscript, and to realize that there was a person and there was an act of creation, of making something, documenting stories and histories with the original source where they can find it in our libraries. And with that, you challenge them to think what is factual, what is truth, what is reproduction, or what is alternative truth that they may have to discover on their own.
Yeah. My experience has been, I have written an article called Role of Education, Role of School Libraries in Education. And I found that now we are moving to technology in every sphere of education. One of the things that librarians, school librarians, encouraging them to talk to the teachers and have a meeting with them, talk to them and tell them the resources that we have. Even teachers sometimes don't come to the libraries, you know. So what we need to do is talk to them and tell them to give assignments with, you know, resources or list of resources that they need to give them assignment on a topic, and tell these are the resources you have to refer in the library, and come out with, you know, some assignment and report, or which will fetch them some percentage of marks at the end of their annual exam. So this helps, you know, as a compulsory part of their course and education. They will use the, you know, they will team up with their group, find out one topic, you know, use the resources available in the library as a compulsory part of the course. So there is, you know, hybrid way of making them understand, use technology, at the same time use resources that are available in the library. Then the other thing is, I have written an article on Voice of India's Disabled demanding equality in library services. So one of the things that we implemented in every library I try to do is that make it disabled friendly. And for that, technology is nowadays, new technologies have come up, and that's, you know, that helps them, the visually impaired people, or, you know, they can access all the resources like a normal person. So technology's use is also in many ways very important for a library as a professional, but every librarian has to be sensitive, empathetic to the needs of such people. That I have written in that article, and it's still relevant. Not all libraries are still following that. So there is a need for making inclusivity in that. And there's one app which is very useful, that's called Kibo app. Why should a child who is not knowing a language, then also they are also impaired, you know, in a way. So if I don't know Arabic, but I want to know what is written in that book, I have an app called Kibo app, and that instantly translates into the language of my choice, and not only translates but also reads out loud in the language of my choice. So I can know what is written in that document and understand it. So this is one useful tool. I think it's very useful for everybody to.
Thank you. So we like to use tech to trick people to coming into the library. I'm a fan of tricking users to do the thing that we know they need to do. So Kenya is is very well connected in terms of high-speed internet, but unfortunately it's still quite expensive. And in the communities that we work in, the cost of data is quite prohibitive. So when we offer free Wi-Fi at the libraries, people come. I think we've increased the patronage by 250% to date because of just offering free Wi-Fi. But the thing is, there's so much more to do in the library than be on your phone or on your devices. So what we started to do a few years ago, and this is going to be quite controversial, and the president of our association is here, but what we started doing is switching off the Wi-Fi at 4 p.m., and then we'd play music. So people can leave their desks, leave their devices, and do something else, because we're very cognizant that there's so many ways to learn. And unfortunately, we have prioritized the book as the way to learn. And I'm a writer, and I want to spend my life writing books, but even I am inspired by a lot more than the written word. So we do encourage people, we draw them in with the Wi-Fi, the high-speed, fast internet, come and do all the things you need to do. And then at 4 p.m., play some music, watch a film, go play the piano, play a board game, talk to someone, and kind of be in community, because while digital connectivity is great, it can also be quite isolating. And when you're in a space where you have actual humans that you can interact with, then get off your phone and do so. Another thing that we use technology for is to design programs. We spend a lot of time looking at what people are searching on the internet. We don't restrict anything unless it's explicit or gambling, and then everything else we allow them to do. So you can be on TikTok and on YouTube in our libraries, but it's what you're doing, because that tells us where interests are. And the thing that comes back to us every single month is that job searches are more popular than YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook, because we have a massive employment crisis. And that begins to tell us, okay, so the library needs to become a job fair center. Can we have career days where we're inviting people to come and have recruitment drives? Because if you don't solve problems with the libraries, then you're not serving your community. I think of libraries as solution centers. And now we look at all the information we need, and often it's digital technology allows us to do that faster, but we look at this data and then we design the programs that truly serve our users.
Thanks so much. I'm aware we only have a couple of minutes, 2 minutes left in this session, but I'd like to invite you all, based on the conversation that we've had today, if there's one thing in a sentence or in a nutshell that you want people in the audience here to take away with them, what is it?
What I will say, especially to information workers and information stakeholders, is that when you have to leverage information to any community, don't do what you think is useful for them, but go out there, do a survey, and know the needs of your community members so that the collections you build will be balanced and will meet the needs, the actual needs of your users. And also provide a box there so that if somebody, and that's another way of attracting people to your library, if a young person has an assignment and doesn't know where to go to, encourage them to drop that assignment in a box. And what you do is that go get the most vibrant videos, websites, and send them to that user and impose on them that if you are dropping your assignment, put a functional email. I think in that way we will be inclusive, and in that way we will be meeting the needs of our community members because we know exactly what they need. Thank you.
I've listened to my fellow presenters speak a lot about being user-centric and how the library supports the user. And I would really like to invite our distinguished moderator, Mr. Harith, to tell us how the library has helped him write his books.
Well, just very briefly, thank you for that. I would just say that libraries, when you're an independent author or an independent researcher, libraries give you access to a world of resources that are just not necessarily accessible or affordable otherwise. And it also provides you with a really curated experience. I think especially for younger readers in today's landscape who are overwhelmed with information, I think it's a really useful way to start to understand how to assess the reliability of resources and how to understand which resources you want to navigate throughout that journey. Thank you for that. Please.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. My experience has been to, I've been a mental health worker. So when I was in UNICEF, I opened the doors for, try out rehabilitating 2 individuals who were going through in a rehabilitation center, trained them in librarian management, and it turned out it became a success, and they went back to become school librarians because the process of involving them to learn and earn was made by someone like a librarian. So there is an opportunity for every librarian to give 1 hour after their office hours to, be inclusive and make an impact.
I think my one kind of nugget or parting shot would be not to be afraid to experiment. I think that libraries are the one space that can respond to a community faster than most policies, most governments, even most schools sometimes, because you don't have as much red tape as most of these other institutions are. So we're the people who often have the solutions for the bigger problems. And that only happens if we embrace experimentation. Don't be afraid to experiment. Ask a lot of questions. We spent 2 years asking questions before we did one bit of restoration, because in our case, we're coming from Nairobi is quite segregated still. So if you're crossing the highway, then you're an outsider on that place where you are. So me as Wanjiru going to Eastland's library, I have no business deciding what Eastland's library users need. So you ask the questions and then you design the spaces or programs or services. But even with that designing, you've got to embrace experimentation, because problems are evolving every day. Every year we have new iterations of the same problems, and libraries can honestly begin to point to solutions faster than anything else I have seen. So experiment.
Thank you so much. That brings us to the end of this session, unfortunately. Before we go, I'd just like to take a minute, please, to thank everybody here in the audience, to thank all the teams at the Mohammed bin Rashid Library, the Emirates Literature Foundation, and Index for organizing this conference, the AV team and volunteers, the translators, and of course, our distinguished guests. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
موئل الثقافات. وحاضنة الإبداع، تحتضن بين أركانها مزيجا فريدا من الثقافات والتقاليد، حيث يلتقي التراث العريق مع الفكر الحديث. على مر العصور كانت دبي مركزا للحوار الحضاري وبيئة مثالية لتلاقي العقول والأفكار من مختلف أرجاء العالم، ساعية دوما لتعزيز ثقافة المعرفة والانفتاح. وهنا اليوم في قلب دبي حيث يبنى المستقبل، في هذا الصرح الثقافي مكتبة محمد بن راشد تلتقي نخبة من العقول من جميع أنحاء العالم في حدث يجمع بين أمجاد الماضي وتحديات الحاضر ورؤى المستقبل. أهلا بكم في أول نسخة من مؤتمر دبي الدولي للمكتبات، حيث تبدأ رحلة جديدة لإعادة تعريف دور المكتبات في العالم. أكثر من 60 خبيرا من 25 دولة يجتمعون ليطرحوا رؤى جديدة